Raise the glass. Here we are once again. We are having so much fun with this show. And I think last week we really introduced people to something maybe they had seen on a shelf but didn't know what it was. And I'm talking about swirl.
Swirl is so much fun to talk about. It's an innovative new product and relatively new. And it's been out for about a year. And made locally here by Nobeleis
Which I
Vineyards,
love.
with all local grapes and different flavor profile from the sangrias to the botanicals. And I've found, because I was pouring it last week at an event, that many people there hadn't tried it before or didn't even know what it was. Mm-hmm. And when you introduce them to that local concept and then they try it, they really did like it, and I think it's getting some attention that it deserves.
And in case you missed last Sunday's show, the swirl has sangria and botanical, and there's 3 different flavors of the sangria. There's a couple of flavors of the botanical, and just a quick reminder before we move into today's topics, what's the difference between the sangria and the botanical?
So sangria, very traditional wine-based sangria, usually with fruit added, sometimes historically with brandy, grape-based brandy added to it. In this case, it's just the flavor profile. And the botanicals are also wine-based, so with all Missouri grapes made at a Missouri winery. But then the difference is with the botanicals, we have thyme for one and rosemary for the other, so we add that herbal effect to it.
You know, we didn't get into this last weekend, but when they make swirl, do they take a wine that is already on the shelves, or are they making this from the beginning?
Yeah, it's made from the beginning with real grapes grown here in Missouri that are made into wine and then made into a blend.
So they're making that wine just for swirl?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so which I like. It's very specific. The natural flavors are added later, but it's not like a candy extract. You know, sometimes in my industry you can add like a candy flavor to it. This is real flavors. Now, you have to make sure it's stable, and you got to make sure that it's not, ruining the product in the can, which they've perfected the art of doing that. But with that natural flavoring really adds to the experience with swirl.
Yeah, and I think you're going to be seeing more and more swirl as time goes on, because I think they're just getting started.
One of the things that I've been researching specifically for the show we're going to talk about today is the new consumer wants authenticity and experience. And so there are a lot of products on the shelf that you really don't know where they came from, and a lot of that's okay, but in this case, it brings you that authenticity, which I love.
I do too. Speaking of authenticity, I don't think there is anything more American than like a good bourbon. And I know that people reach out to you all the time, which your email is?
Mike@wardonwine.com.
And one of the most popular themes, one of the most popular questions that you get is typically about bourbon.
Yeah.
When did we actually hit that peak of bourbon?
Well, several years ago, bourbon became more fashionable and more sought after. And what that did to the industry was it drove it into unavailable bourbons. So because bourbon has to age for at least 2 years, but the good ones age for 4 to 6 years, they don't really need to age for 18 years like a Scotch would.
Got it.
So if the demand is there, what's going to happen is the distilleries aren't going to have the product to be able to supply that demand. And I think we saw that back in the COVID times, where people were really wanting whiskey, but it wasn't there. We've adjusted a little bit. We've made more whiskey, but it really is very popular now. It's kind of in that mainstream kind of drinker society. People who I never would have pictured drinking bourbon are now drinking bourbon and whiskey, and they're interested in it. And again, it kind of drives them towards that experience that they want.
I feel like for so long it was you mixed a little something with your bourbon or your whiskey. It was that whiskey and Coke. And I feel like now, and I would love to get your insight on this, it is now really just neat or on the rocks? A lot of people really want to taste the bourbon. Has the bourbon or the whiskey gotten that much better that we don't need to mix it with something, or are we just wiser about it? What changed?
Well, it's a combination of changing palates and consumer demand, and then kind of changing what whiskey's all about, whether it's a standard, say, 90 proof whiskey, or a high proof whiskey, or a single barrel whiskey, or some of those. You're going to adjust your palate depending on how much alcohol is there, how long the whiskey's aged. So, for example, if you really like cocktails, you like the traditional cocktails, Manhattan, old fashioned, maybe the high proof whiskeys, the single barrel or those kind of high proof, they can get up to 111 or
I gotta
higher.
say, I will never forget when I think somebody gave me a Booker's and beautiful like wooden box, and I didn't look at the label really, and I poured it over some ice, probably just one big rock, and I took a typical sip that I would take of my bourbon, and it burned a little bit. Yeah, that is not for the beginner.
It's not, and it shouldn't be. You got to work yourself up to that. Yeah,
but that's all about the proof. Is that what is burning? If you think of a whiskey that kind of, as they would say, puts hair on your chest.
Let's do this very quickly. So whiskey's made in the barrel. That's where it's going to get its color. It's going to go through some evaporation. The proof is going to be maybe when it goes in 130 or so. So half that is alcohol. So that's pretty high, and that alcohol could raise a little bit due to evaporation of the water, not the whiskey. So typically, what a distillery will do is bring some water in there and bring that proof down to 80, 90 in that neighborhood. And I think those whiskeys are really good for Manhattans, old fashions, and other cocktails. The high proof whiskeys, so barrel strength whiskeys that haven't been diluted to an even proof, that's not for the beginner.
I learned.
And my stance on it is, and this is just my opinion, is if you're going to make a Manhattan, the high proof experience, you really can't taste the other ingredients. I can, at least. I can't taste my vermouth, which I really like. I've mentioned this before. I really like a good vermouth. I can't taste my Luxardo cherry. All I can taste is alcohol.
Each one of those.
Right. Now, I know people that like the high proof Manhattan. That's fine. If that's what your palate wants, that's great. It's just not for me. I want to be able to taste the whiskey and everything else I'm adding. I want to taste the bitters.
Yeah.
I use a good orange bitter. I want to taste that. And I can't if it's all alcohol.
So let's go back just a little bit with the heritage of bourbon. And maybe we should start with the difference between whiskey and bourbon, because I think that kind of gets muddied every once in a while. A whiskey is a bourbon, but a bourbon isn't necessarily a whiskey.
Right. So a bourbon would be in the whiskey category, but a whiskey, like, for example, Tennessee whiskey is not bourbon, but it's whiskey. And Canadian whiskey is whiskey, but it's not bourbon, and it never can be.
Okay.
Irish
so what are the
whiskey
requirements?
Is whiskey, but it can't be bourbon. So a bourbon has to come from the U.S. That's
number one.
The number one, and that was signed into law in 1964.
A little later than I thought.
Yeah, but bourbon had been known here for longer than that, but that's when it became law, and we have to use 51% corn in the mash bill, or the ingredients or the grains that go into it, and then you can use rye or wheat or barley after that. But 51% has to be corn, and it has to be aged in new charred white oak American barrels, mostly coming from here in Missouri.
So there's 3 little checks that you have to hit. Is that all of them, or is there anything else?
If it says straight bourbon whiskey, there are some rules behind the proof.
Okay.
If it says straight, but those aren't fun to talk about. If it says straight bourbon whiskey, like a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey,
yes,
then it has to be aged at least 2 years. So if it just says bourbon on the label, usually your bourbon is aged longer than 2 years, but there's no actual aging requirement unless it says straight on the label.
Okay, let's talk about the 51% corn mash. If you have a typical whiskey, is there corn in it at all?
So maybe.
Okay, but
Maybe.
not necessarily.
So if you're drinking Irish whiskey or Scotch, you're drinking barley.
Okay.
Mostly, but there could be other grains in there as well. There's grain whiskey, so it gets a little confusing.
So how many different grains can be used to make whiskey?
It's typically corn, wheat, rye, and barley. And barley is the most efficient because it can create alcohol very quickly and easily. So usually whiskeys have an element of barley included, malted barley, which really gets the fermentation process going, where the other grains are a little less efficient for getting the sugar source going.
So does it take longer to make a rye whiskey or a rye bourbon than it does your typical?
Well, I wouldn't say the actual initial fermentation might not be longer, but it's just a little bit slower and is a little harder to start.
Got it. Because I know
barley gets it going very quickly.
Okay.
And evenly.
A lot of people are very particular. They either really like their rye or they really stay away from it. I love a rye whiskey.
Last couple of weekends, I've been out pouring whiskey a lot, and that's always fun when you talk to the whiskey drinker because they are very knowledgeable. And there are people that are really serious about, I like bourbon. Oh, I don't like rye. Or usually the rye drinker's like, yeah, I'll drink bourbon too. But there are bourbon drinkers like, get me away from the rye. I don't want to have anything to do with it. And not a lot of people that I encounter that are really equally for both.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting to talk to consumers, which I love to do, and really get to know what their taste profile is. And most distilleries make both nowadays.
Can you kind of put your thumb on who the bourbon whiskey drinker is these days?
I wish I could, because it's all over the board.
It is, isn't it?
It's everybody. You know, I get like a, 70-year-old grandma at my table that it likes it, and maybe a 25-year-old that likes it. So it really is,
and more women these days.
Way more, yes.
Because I think for a long time, whiskey was like a man's drink. And now you see a lot of women ordering either a Manhattan or a old-fashioned or just drinking it neat or over the rocks.
I was pouring Maker's Mark, which I love to pour. And
I feel like that's always the go-to. I don't care what bar you're in and what corner of any small town, they're going to have makers, and it's always steady.
Yeah, and we're probably going to do a whole show on makers. So
I would love to.
Coming up here pretty soon, I'm talking to him about it. But I was at a store pouring Maker's Mark, which is a great standard whiskey, and then the cask strength and a 101 Maker's Mark. And it was amazing to see the difference of people coming to me tasting it, women tasting the high proof, saying that was their favorite. So, it really isn't genetics. It really is a preference type of thing. But everybody's into the bourbon category, and they're knowledgeable.
Yeah.
Whereas when I'm pouring wine, I got to use a little bit more of my training and education. And when I'm pouring bourbon, I'm speaking to it, sure, but they know just as much as I do sometimes.
Well, there's just so many other things that can go into it. And I know we'll talk about Jefferson's Ocean at some point because we both love that one.
Yeah.
But tell people how that is aged because it is so unique.
Well, it's innovative places that you can put your whiskey and see how it ages. And so Maker's Mark, very even and steady. Same mash bill since the 1970s in the same aging situation in Kentucky.
Still wax dipped.
But the only difference, the only difference might be the finishing barrels or how they choose the barrels. At Jefferson, he said, Trey Zoller, who's been on our show a long time ago, he said, well, what if we put these barrels on a ship and have them go around the world 4 times, across the equator 4 times?
They're bouncing around, and the liquid is hitting every possible corner of that barrel.
It's cold, it's hot, it's dry, it's sunny, it's wet, and we're not talking about in the hull of the ship or in a shipping container. We're talking about strapped to the ship, to the deck.
I don't think I realized that.
Yeah.
So it really feels the sun.
Right. It feels everything. It's just a barrel, and they're strapped to the deck, and they are getting the full effect of anything that ship goes through. And the ship's tracking whale migration. So it's everywhere. It's hitting all the continents for that length of time. And so then we get the barrel back and we see how's that going to affect the taste. And it really, really does have an effect.
It does.
You get that little sea salt flavor to it. That's the one whiskey that I thought people would be on the fence with it, but everybody that tries it loves it.
Yeah,
it's just so well received.
So good. And then remind me, does it have a voyage number or okay?
Yeah. And now they're doing the Jefferson's Ocean Rye edition. So there is a rye edition now. But it was bourbon for a long time. But remember that it has to qualify for a bourbon first before it goes on the deck of the ship. So you're going to see bourbon on the label, it has to have already gone through the aging to qualify as a bourbon, and it can't go somewhere and be bottled somewhere else. That wooden barrel has to come back and be bottled here. Okay. So even though it travels, there are requirements. Just like when we talk about Irish whiskey, which we will here pretty soon, it can't leave Ireland in a barrel or it's not Irish whiskey anymore.
Man, all the little ins and outs. Before we go to break, how popular are cocktails versus just drinking it out of the bottle over ice these days?
Well, I think cocktails are more popular than ever, and I think it's the innovation in cocktails. So not just the standard Manhattan. Mm-hmm. I remember my dad drank Manhattans, but I don't think I would have liked them because I'm not sure he put any care or time into what it was put together. Now they do.
Mixologists, they've just turned the whole world on its ear because every single thing they do, you got egg whites maybe on something, and it's amazing what they're throwing into cocktails and how delicious they are.
Or smoked,
yes.
Which I can't perfect at home, but a good mixologist can do it. And then you have the pre-prohibition cocktails like a Boulevardier, which is kind of fun to make every once in a while.
Are the pre-prohibition coming back?
I think they've come back. I think you got to find the right place to kind of to get somebody that does it right.
Yeah.
And then there's new cocktails that people are inventing using bourbon. And bourbon's a very cocktail forward type of spirit because you get all that nice flavor from it.
Yeah, man. Or just drink it on the rocks. Just a little sipper at night, if you will.
We may do a show down the road on vodka, but it might be a short show, even though there's definitely people that like vodka, but vodka's not supposed to have taste. So I don't know how long we could talk about.
And every single bourbon tastes a little bit different.
It really does.
We could line up, 10 right now, and not a single one of them would taste the same.
All right, let's do it. Let's line up 10 and see if we can. I'm here for it. All right.
All right, let's take a short break while we line up our bourbon. I hope the boss didn't hear that. You're listening to Uncorked with Word on Wine and Heidi Glaus.
Mary says she has a well-trained staff, and I know they're well-trained because I do their training on the product. She trains them on, knowing where they're supposed to be and all the great details, and then I teach them about the product. So they're out in stores. We are hired by a winery or a distillery or a brewery to represent their brands. So when you see people standing in Schnucks, Deerbergs, Randall's, or other locations, Save On, doesn't matter. Any place where you're buying a product, you come in for some reason to taste something, one of her staff members can taste it with you.
Which is so fantastic because there are hundreds, thousands of products on all of these shelves, and there's no way that you can go and try them all on your own. And so you guys kind of are the shortcut.
Well, we are. And, I do this myself as well. And I enjoy doing it and get out and talk with listeners. And I can't tell you how many people say, "Oh, are you the Mike Ward on the Heidi Glaus show?" And I'm like, "Yes." "You listen to it?" "Yeah, I listen to it all the time."
But that's on Fridays. Now you have your own show.
Right.
Every Sunday night here at the Big 550 at 6 o'clock.
That's right. And it does connect with people. And I tell them, if you're going to spend $20, $30 or more on something and you've never tried it, you should try it before you spend that money, because what happens if you don't like it? So that's where this industry is going.
And what I love, and I think I was a little surprised by when we first met all those years ago, is you're not some big $100 bottle of wine guy. You always say you might find a bottle for $12 that to you is just as good as that $150 bottle. I mean, it's not necessarily about price.
You know what? And I always say this, that I've found that people who spend $100 or more on something in my industry, they're typically disappointed because your expectations are
so
off the
high.
charts. And but and you're probably not drinking it the way it's meant to be drank or at the time, you know. But that $15 to $25 price point is the wheelhouse of the industry. That's where the best things are. If you buy a $20 bottle of wine and it tastes like a $50 bottle of wine, you are in heaven. That's perfect.
Isn't that the truth? So where are you guys going to be outpouring in the upcoming weeks?
So, of course, approaching Halloween. Halloween's a big, it's a big deal. It's a big
Can I tell you what we do?
Yeah.
And this is going to be on a Friday night. And I stole this from neighbors. At the end of maybe the year, here in October 31st, we maybe have a couple of things that we've bought throughout the summer that we didn't like or we have too much of. And so we tend to put a cooler out front. So we have all of our candy for the kids.
Yeah.
And then we have our candy for the adults.
Yeah.
And so if mom and dad are walking with their kids trick-or-treating, we have an adult-only basket as well.
Question for you. Do you ask the adults for a joke before they...
I'm kind of scared of what those jokes would be, but maybe I will this year.
That's right. That's right.
So you guys will be out pouring what? Do you know?
We'll be pouring over the next few weeks. Now, let me start by saying the best way to resource this is to get on the Wow Promotions or Ward on Wine Facebook page, because that's going to list them all. Because if I just list them out, nobody's going to really remember. But I know we're in on the 25th of October. We're in several Deerberg's locations, and one of them is going to be right around the corner from you. Several St. Charles locations. We were at all over West County, of course, and we're pouring wine, a mixed bag of wines.
Got it.
We are also pouring a new tequila that we're going to talk about on one of our shows, El Bandito Tequila. We're going to be at Randall's, a couple of locations, pouring that. And we've got a tequila tasting with our friends from Milagro. And Wagner Family Wines, co-brand, which means we might be doing some French wines. So all of these are listed out, the Ward on Wine Facebook page. Mary does a pretty good job of updating you, so you can look if you're going to be out and around.
Running errands,
and
stop
you
by.
See a well-trained person in the store, that's one of Mary's people.
Okay, so there's also some classes that maybe people should know about, because I know the Wine Barrel does classes. And tell me about the one coming up October 21st. That's right around the corner.
So the classes are designed to be sort of listener-oriented. So these are like requests. So I can decide to do a class, but it's better if people say, oh, why don't you do a class like this?
It's wanted.
Right. Wine label literacy, that's coming up November 11th. But the one we just talked about is varietal comparison, which means, have you ever wondered what a Cabernet from Napa and a Cabernet, say, from Bordeaux taste like next to each other? Or even if we did a Cabernet Sauvignon from Napa and one from Sonoma across the mountain.
They taste completely different.
They do. And so we'll compare those. We'll do an Oregon Pinot Noir from Willamette Valley with a California Pinot Noir. Yeah.
Okay, so let's just pick your brain for a second. If you have a Cabernet from Sonoma and a Cabernet from Napa, which one is going to be a little spicier? What are going to be just a generic tasting notes of the two?
So that's the fun part of teaching the class. So there's a mountain range that separates Sonoma and Napa Valley, and Sonoma side has coastal effect. Napa Valley doesn't at all, which means those Napa Valley Cabernets in general might be a little more powerful, have a little bit more tannin to them, meaning they're The tannin doesn't have a smell or an aroma, but it makes the wine a little bitter. But air will help that, and then aromas like spiciness will follow after it opens up in the air.
And that one's from where?
That's Napa Valley.
Okay.
Sonoma, maybe I hesitate to say softer, but velvety. They can also be very powerful, but it's a whole different set of aromas and flavors. Now, they're both going to have the basic Cabernet flavors, which are raspberry, black cherry, sometimes coffee, sometimes chocolate. They'll have that because that's Cabernet.
Right.
But then all the other stuff that you can find
comes from the soil,
comes from the climate and, other growing conditions that those grapes are in. Now, if we added a Bordeaux to the mix, it would be a different type of experience with maybe more leather and tobacco and things like that. Now, remember, for those listening, if you're kind of a beginner on wine, none of this is added to the wine. This is what grapes taste like when they're fermented.
We are going to dive into all of this over the next year or two, however long they let us do this show here on the Big 550. I also want to talk about the Old Orchard Fall Festival because that's a fun event. We got Spirits in the Garden coming up October 24th. That's always fun because, one, you're just in the botanical garden at night, and it is gorgeous. When you see those plants and trees and evergreens lit up, it's just a beautiful thing.
They do such great events there, and I do a couple throughout the year, and it's such a fun place to go. And if you're there and you're able to sample some local spirits, there'll also be foods there, of course, too, or a distillery is there, or a brewery is there, and you can sample something local. And I think it's local that's kind of connecting and resonating with people, so that's what I would encourage you to try.
Well, while we're talking local, I didn't even realize that this report comes out yearly, but the Missouri Vintage Report from Nobeleis Vineyards in Augusta, this harvest was pretty darn good. I know we're talking like now, we've had a lot of dry weather, but this harvest has been one for the books.
It really has, and it's probably due to the dry weather and the heat spike that we had.
Yeah.
Remember how a couple weeks ago it was 100, then it's down the 90s. Well, and it's dry. People don't really like that so much, but grapevines kind of like that. And so we were talking about maybe ripeness of fruit, which translates to more sugar, which can be more balanced wines with a little bit higher alcohol. If it's cloudy or moist out and there's no photosynthesis going on, I didn't want to get into science class here, but that means less sugar and the wines are a little bit less balanced. So we had a year where the dry conditions, when they happened towards the end of the year, that's perfect timing for grapes growing on the vine.
Who knew?
If we compare like California, we talk about the drought years ago in California, and those were great vintages. 2017, 18, 19, all these dry, super dry, where they didn't have a drop of rain. Terrible for other crops, people, cattle.
But great for grapes.
But grapes really like that. Now, they're going to get to a point where they're going to need a little water.
Yeah.
So we need rain here in the next few weeks when the vines are done working and all the clusters are off the vine. But for right now, completely dry conditions is perfect, and we're going to have a great crop here in Missouri.
So great for all grapes. The Norton, the Chamberson, all grapes love that kind of weather.
They do, and they produce a lot of clusters of grapes. And like the best wineries will go through and maybe not use all those grapes, but you have a lot to choose from. So one thing I read, 123 tons of grapes. That makes a lot of bottles of wine. And that may be up from previous vintages that might have been like 90 tons, and so you're making less and you're kind of struggling. So that's a good thing at a time when I think people are coming back to local wines a little bit.
Yeah, so look for the 2025 label.
Yeah, it's going to be a little while. Let it sit, let it ferment. Everything's fermenting right now.
When do we see that on shelves?
We'll see it in spring into summer. Norton's a little bit longer. We'll see those white wines sooner.
Okay.
But it does take a little bit of time. They got to ferment and sit around, and they have to go through a couple of winemaking stages before they're released.
Okay, well, I have something that a lot of people have asked me, and of course, I only know the person to turn to, and that's always Mike Ward. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll talk about tariffs and how that affects some of our favorite wines, especially coming from maybe France or Italy. That's coming up after a short break. You're listening to Uncorked with Ward on Wine and Heidi Glaus on the Big 550 KTRS St. Louis. The whole tariff thing has been confusing on so many products. Of course, I'm wondering about what tariffs mean for wines coming in from other countries. So, Mike Ward, what do you know about this?
Well, I've done a lot of reading on this, of course, because you want to know what's going to happen and try to anticipate, what we're going to be talking about or thinking about or how we're going to sell wine. And what I've come out of it is it's not like all gloom and doom.
Okay.
I think that we're kind of seeing some shifting in the market with wine, and winemakers are going to have to kind of market things a little bit different and anticipate a little bit different.
But we're still going to get those shipments.
We will, and to be panicked, they're going to cost twice as much,
right.
Things like that. I don't really think so. I think there will be some higher prices, but I think the quality is going to be there. Now, what wineries are doing. Let's just take France, for example. It's a very productive country for wine. They make more than, not as much as Italy, but they make a lot of wine.
Okay.
They also sell a lot of wine in the U.S., and there's going to be at least a 15% tariff on those wines. We were afraid it was going to be 30, 35. And that's changing, of course.
Got it.
But they also sell a lot of wine to China and Asia and other countries. And South America is an emerging market for wine. Brazil, you think, they have Argentina right there. Well, sure, they drink a lot of wine from Argentina as well. Brazil does have a wine region, but it's tiny compared to the rest of the country that's too tropical to grow grapes. So in France, they can kind of look at those markets. So the trend is going to be, because of the tariffs, that French winemakers, both large and small, will be, unfortunately, looking for other markets besides the U.S. to sell their wine.
So we might not find our favorite bottle.
Well, I think our choices may be less, but I think we'll be able to find our favorite wines.
Okay. And you're here to help with that.
Yeah, I am. And, it's nothing to panic about. And are they going to be 50 cents a bottle more or $1 more, or in some cases for higher priced wines more? Yes, that could happen. But I don't think we're going to say, I like this French wine, it's my favorite, and now it's going to be twice as much or 3 times as much. Hey, I'm not an economist. I don't have all the answers, but I'm trying to watch the trends and read articles and be able to get at least out in front of what we think is going to happen.
Well, I love that you kind of give us the Cliff Notes version of that. I'm also wondering just about market trends when it comes to wine around the country and around the world. What are we seeing?
Well, user experience. So I'm already
seeing...
Just like the cocktails.
Okay.
People want to be more of an insider. They want to know, and especially this resonates with Gen Z, which is good. We're going to get them into the wine drinking community if we can. But they want to be part of it. They want to know where it came from and why it came from there. I think my generation as a boomer, we just bought it and drank it, and we didn't really know the questions to ask.
So are they more concerned about organic?
Yes, sustainable, organics, biodynamics, all of those make a difference. Vegan-friendly wines, that all on the label, that's going to make a difference. The price per bottle, sure, it makes a difference depending on your income. The vintage date, I don't think that resonates as much, but I did find this really interesting trend where there's some really expensive wines that people are going to be able to taste.
How?
Well, have you ever heard of a wine from Burgundy? It's Pinot Noir called Romani Conti.
I have not.
Okay. Sometimes it's shortened to just DRC, Domaine Romani Conti. And it comes from Burgundy, and it's a small vineyard, and some would consider it the best place in the world to grow a grape.
Really?
Now, the wines there, I haven't checked lately, but I know last time I looked were $5,000 or $6,000
A bottle?
a bottle.
Whoa. Okay.
And they only make a few hundred cases every year. Now you'd think, well, I would never try that.
No.
Who's going to buy it for me? Or is a lottery going to come through for me?
Mm-hmm.
But what we understand now, or what I'm reading, is because of something called a Coravin. You know what a Coravin is?
Yes, but
So
go ahead and explain.
It's a device you can attach to the
Yes.
top of the bottle and stick a needle through the cork.
You don't have to drink the entire bottle.
Right. You
It
can drink
stays good.
a glass of wine, and then the rest of it puts a little nitrogen in there. It gets rid of all the air, and the rest of the bottle is going to be fine for an extended period of time. So now, I don't think this trend has really come to St. Louis yet. It's more of a big city type of thing, but you can try these super expensive wines, and you can just get it like a half a glass. It's still going to cost you a few $100s.
But you're at least getting the opportunity to sample something maybe you would never have had the
Right.
opportunity to do.
I mean, how many people listening to us
Yeah.
can just go buy a $6,000 bottle of wine? And if I was able to do that, or somebody bought it for me, I'm not going to open it. That'd be crazy.
No.
But if you can try it somewhere, you're far better off. So these are some of the innovative trends that I think we're going to see, where I can almost kind of envision the wine world is shifting. And it's really kind of trying to figure out, well, people are drinking less, so how do we address that? People want a different experience, so how do we address that different experience? That's where I see things kind of going, and we're going to track that on the show, and I'm going to do my research ahead of time so that we have good answers for people on what to expect coming up.
I wanted your thoughts on this because I feel like in the last month, I've seen 2 or 3 local breweries closing their door.
Yeah.
Now, good news, Ferguson Brewery is closing, but Good News Brewing just announced that they're going to take over that space. Have we just oversaturated the market when it comes to the smaller local breweries?
Well, we did, I think, a few years ago. And I also think we are coming off this reaction to the COVID shutdown where alcohol sales went through the roof, and then they came down sharply, and it's a false type of curve where and a global incident made things shift. And it strongly affected, I think, our local brewery. Well, it affected everything,
Right.
Obviously. But I think it also had a strong effect on, for example, some of the local breweries. I think it's an adjustment.
Yeah.
We're
It's
going to
not-
come back from it.
All right. I love hearing that. What do we have coming up in the next week or two? We got to talk Halloween for sure.
So we will. One of the wines I didn't mention is we're doing a couple of demos on a wine called Freak Show.
Oh, how perfect is that for Halloween?
Those labels are kind of fun for Halloween. And so we'll talk a little bit more about, the weather's going to change, right? Don't you think?
I
At
would
some
hope
point?
so. It's St. Louis, so you never know. But
So,
yeah, it'll
we-
probably change 2 or 3 times.
We kind of missed maybe talking about some of the fall beers, but we could be talking about that. I think a lot of them are gone, and we kind of transitioned into those stouts and the cold weather beers. Same with wine. We're shifting into more heavier reds that we can start to talk about. I mean, we're going to have to start talking about Thanksgiving pretty soon.
Because you got to plan for it.
Yeah, already got some wineries that are like, when can I get on and do a show dedicated to my new it's going to be perfect for Thanksgiving. We're going to have some opportunities where people can really get out in the aisle of Schnucks or Dierbergs where you're buying your Thanksgiving food and have somebody there to help you. I'll talk about that later. Find your wines for you. We're really going to make efforts to make this an easy year for you where everybody's busy. They don't have time to shop the wine aisle like I do, and we're going to make it easier for you.
We're going to let Mike Ward do all of the hard work, and we're just going to go shopping. And, of course, you don't have to wait until the week of Thanksgiving. You don't have to wait until Halloween to ask Mike a question about your favorite wine or what you want to pair something with. He is always available online via email at
Mike@wardonwine.com.
And I know we're also going to talk to Haley with Altair Travel because you have a fun trip coming up.
We've got a fun trip coming up, and she's got a lot of things that she's going to come in and partner with us on and talk about. We're going to ask her a bunch of difficult questions about tourism. So get those questions in so we can ask Haley. no better person to ask than her. So we're excited to have her on as well. And then it's going to be, gifts and things. I mean, the rest of the year is going to be super busy. So.
It will. I can't believe we're already this far into October. Before you know it, it will be Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then we'll be popping the cork on a new year. But we are here to hopefully entertain you a little bit, educate you a little bit, and just have a little bit of fun on a Sunday night at 6, maybe wrapping up the football and opening up that bottle of wine and listening to Mike Ward and myself. This has been so much fun. You're listening to Uncorked with Ward on Wine and Heidi Glaus here on the Big 550 KTRS. Until next Sunday, cheers to you.
Cheers, everybody.